Good morning. May I invite those who can find a seat, please take a seat. And otherwise, please stand up. We are about to start. Well, good morning, and I want to wish a particular welcome to ambassadors, senior representatives of permanent missions, our social partners, distinguished representatives from international organizations, representatives of businesses and of youth organizations who are joining us today. And we are going to have this discussion around decent jobs for youth in two segments. This is the first segment, which is going to be somewhat interactive, and that's why I am eager to start early so that we have some time for question and answer. And then we will make a little pause at about 11:22, and then we will have the second segment of this discussion, which will be the high-level panel with the participation of our Director General, but also very distinguished panelists that I will introduce later to you to mark the launch of the engagement platform, the web platform of the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth, which is the most inclusive, overarching, multi-stakeholder partnership. And we will be talking about it in a while. And also the launch of our new publication on quality apprenticeships. So let us just get going. In this part of the discussion, we will be talking to you about three very recent reports or initiatives. One is, of course, you may have noticed that only last week we released our latest edition of the Global Employment Trends for Youth. And I will be telling you a little bit, if we can start already on the trends. This is what we are going to present to you in a very summary form, but this is available. It has been already making the headlines of the newspapers, and that is not a very encouraging story that we are going to hear about the employment situation for young people. The second short presentation that we will do is for all those of you who may not know, again, a very brief recap of the history, the main components, and the guiding principles and the action part of the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth. And we will also have the benefit of having my colleague who will be talking to you about the indicators of SDG, 2030 SDG, which is focusing more particularly on the issue of youth employment. So let's without further ado go through the presentation. After these three sets of brief presentations, we will be taking question and answers. So please hold on if you have questions or comments on any part of the discussion. Please note them. I'll take them at the end. So let's start with the last edition of our Global Employment Trends for Youth 2017, which is the main part of it is, of course, detailing out our trends on how youth have been faring in the labor market. This is a biannual publication, and each time we are presenting the trends, but also we have a specific topic for policy analysis. And this time we put an emphasis on technology and youth employment and sectoral shifts for youth employment. And of course, the report has also a few chapters on the issue of what policy implications and policy recommendation we can make in the light of the analysis that precedes. The trends, what do the trends show us is that although the total number of unemployed youth, 70.9 million, is lower than the peak of the youth unemployment, which was about 76 million, but the rate remains the same, 13.1, and we still see a very tight labor market for young people, and this projection is likely to increase the number of young women and men unemployed in the next year. If we now go to the other trend, which is looking at the regions, obviously you will see that unfortunately Northern Africa and the Arab states continue to have the highest rate of youth unemployment. There is a slight decrease, but that is minor. We see an increase in Latin America and the Caribbean, somewhat better in Europe and advanced economies. And in Asia, while the youth unemployment rates are relatively low, nevertheless, we find that the ratio of youth to adult unemployment, which globally is about 3 to 1, in Asia is 5.5 to 1. So there are stories behind all these figures that show that globally and almost in all countries and regions, we are having still a very tight labor market for young people. If we go to the next indicator, another trend, we see that globally young people represent 22% of need. You know, this is the indicator under the SDGs that Steve will be talking to you about it, neither in employment nor education and training. And what is also interesting, important to note that on all these indicators, there is a serious gender gap. And even on NEET, we will see that they represent a higher proportion of NEET globally, and you will see there the proportions in emerging economies, developing and developed world. However, unemployment, as we have been arguing, is only the tip of the iceberg. What is more concern as well is that those who are working, those who manage to get a work, they are not necessarily coming out of poverty. They are mostly engaged in informal employment, in vulnerable employment, in insecure temporary employment. So today, in these trends, 160.6 million young people are working, but living in emerging and developing countries, working but living in extreme or moderate poverty. That's below $3.1 that we use as a benchmark. And young people, as I mentioned, are more likely to be affected by informal jobs. You see that this proportion is 3 to 4 for young women and men, and 3 to 5 for adult workers. The report also finds, as I mentioned, but we are not going to delve into that, the growth sectors, financial services, health, trade, transport, information, and communication. The report looks into the impact of new technologies, internet platforms, gig economies on youth employment. And it ends with a discussion on where we need to put the focus, including on digital skills, including on sectoral strategies for creation of additional decent job opportunities for young people in this report. That's all I wanted to say for the global employment trend youth. And now I want to ask my colleague, Steve Kapsis, from the Department of Statistics of ILO to briefly walk us through the complicated framework of indicators under the 2030 SDG, which more particularly focus on youth employment. Steve, you have the floor.
Great, thanks very much, Azita. And I will follow your lead and also be brief in my comments this morning so that we have time for discussion. I'll jump right in. I'm going to basically talk about the global monitoring framework for SDGs, how we monitor youth employment outcomes within the SDG framework, what are some of the challenges related to that, and what we're doing, what our efforts are to try to tackle those challenges and have better and more data pertaining to labor markets in the SDGs and youth in the labor markets. So, the main takeaway with the SDG in terms of monitoring progress towards the SDGs, if there's one takeaway that I'd like you to have today, it's that it's extraordinarily complex. So we all know with the MDGs, they were focused on developing countries, focused mainly on reducing poverty. With the SDGs, the overall goals are much broader, more ambitious, sustainable development for the whole world, not just developing countries. And with the monitoring framework that goes with that, it's increased in complexity exponentially. So versus 8 goals under the MDGs, we have 17 under the SDGs. We have roughly 10 times more targets under the SDGs. We have 232 indicators to monitor progress towards the SDGs. So it's much more complex, much more burdensome on national statistical offices, on international agencies for reporting on all of the various dimensions. It's also complex because a lot of the indicators that were chosen have a lot of disaggregation. So age disaggregation, sex disaggregation, rural, urban, and the like. Now, that's great if you're interested in looking at issues pertaining to youth because more of the indicators are disaggregated by age. And another area is that reporting on the SDGs versus the MDGs is much more driven at the national level. So NSOs have to be emboldened, have greater capacity, more resources to report on the SDGs. So it's complex. Now, where do youth fit in within the SDGs? Well, the youth indicators, youth employment-related indicators are under 3 goals. Goal 1, to end poverty. And the very first SDG indicator, 1.1.1, is on poverty. So extreme poverty, as Azita just mentioned in her remarks. But this is where the complicated disaggregations come into play. It's the international poverty line, those below it, by sex, age, employment status, and geographic location. So this gives us the working poor. You're employed and you're poor. And it calls for disaggregation by age. So you can look at the young working poor under this indicator. There's another employment-related indicator under Goal 4 that's not directly employment-related, but it looks at education and training. And then the indicators where the ILO is really working a lot mainly fall under Goal 8. Here we have 4 indicators that pertain specifically to youth and one that's on child labor where there's some overlap with the youth cohort. So we have 8.5.1, which is the average hourly earnings of female and male employees by age, occupation, and persons with disabilities, another very complex indicator. I have here on the slide that it's a Tier 2 indicator. What that indicates is that there are well-established methodologies for this indicator, but we don't have a lot of data around the world for the indicator. Tier 1 indicators, there's established methodologies, but we have a lot of data. Tier 3 indicators, there may not be an international standard, and there may not be any data at all. So we have indicators across all 3 tiers under Goal 8. The unemployment rate that Azita just mentioned, the NEET rate, those are both Tier 1 indicators. We have fairly good coverage. And then we have 8.B.1, which is the only Tier 3 indicator currently under development, which looks at the existence of a developed and operationalized strategy for youth employment. within the national strategy. So this is a set of indicators that were chosen to monitor the SDGs. You can say some interesting things with these indicators, as Azita showed. So this is the working poor, youth versus adults. Here we can see that around a third of young people who are employed are poor, based on this $3.10 international poverty line, versus only around one in 5 adults. We can see that the evolution of NEET rates, and this shows the NEET rates among young women versus young men, and basically shows that young women tend to have much higher incidence of being NEET as opposed to young men. The further up you are in that chart, the more disadvantaged women are relative to men. You can see the unemployment rate that Azita mentioned. So that gives you the framework under the SDGs. But what I'd like to point out is that this is a good starting point for assessing the situation of youth in the labor market, but it's not comprehensive. It doesn't give a complete picture of the situation of youth. You have to look beyond the SDG indicator framework to really get a full picture of what's going on with youth. For instance, you'd want to look at status in employment to see, are they employees, or are they own account workers, are they in formal or informal jobs, are they entrepreneurs, what are their hours of work, are they working excessive hours, or are they underemployed, wanting to work more, are their skills that they've attained a good match for the types of jobs that they're in. None of these indicators are captured under the SDGs. So we can't think of the SDG as sort of a panacea in terms of monitoring the situation. The other issue that I'd like to point out is even for the indicators that are Tier 1, where we have good coverage, this is the NEET rate, we have big data gaps around the world. So this shows the countries in blue where we have in ILO stat are at least one data point since the year 2010. So you can see massive gaps in Africa, some significant gaps in Asia as well, and even countries that are blue. I'll pick on India here. The last data point that we have for this is from 2012, 5 years ago. So we need to work on having more regular data and data from countries where we currently don't have anything if we want to monitor the situation. So what do we do at the ILO for that? The starting point is ILO Stat, which is our central statistical database, and this is just a snapshot of our webpage where we present the SDG labor market indicators, but also the fuller set of decent work indicators, some of which I was just referring to. So this is the starting point. But as with most databases and websites, what you see on the top is only a part of what's going on. And a lot of the work that we're doing to support countries is really what's going on here under the island that you see in terms of supporting them on compiling data and also processing data ourselves. We do this through our annual questionnaire that we send out to countries, and we've gotten much more, I would say, aggressive in terms of following up with countries, working with them to support their data collection efforts to make sure that the indicators that they're producing adhere to international standards. And we're also, the world is changing and we're trying to change with it. New technologies enable us to do more in an automated way. And our data production for SDG monitoring, we're really putting an emphasis on this. So working on bulk ways of getting data, processing the data here at the ILO to ensure international comparability. And what I'd like to really point out is our work on microdata processing. So countries conduct a labor force survey. They have the underlying data set. They report those data to the international system. But one of the problems that we face with youth is that countries won't disaggregate by age the indicators that they report, so we won't have that information. So we're working with countries to get access to their labor force survey microdata. We went from having about 1,000 data sets to 6,000 in 2 years. We've processed 4,000 of those, and that is enabling us to fill in some of these data gaps. And I'd just also like to point out that we have a forthcoming guidebook on SDG labor market indicators that helps to explain a lot more than what I can do in 10 minutes here. So with that, I thank you for your attention. Thanks, Azita.
Thank you very much, Steve, for walking us through this in such a brief time. But I would like to come back to the the indicator 8.b, that one, the slide, because while, as Steve explained, many of these indicators are actually going to measure the results, the improvement in the labor market. And Steve just mentioned how difficult or challenging is that one. We also have completed in the past our estimates with very thorough methodology of school-to-work transition that we applied in particular in countries where they don't have regular labor force surveys. And that has been a very important source for policy discussion afterwards, because each labor market, each country context is very specific. So we cannot generalize on types of policies that will work and that are needed in a very particular setting. So I would like to focus on that, because all countries will have to prepare reports on action taken in pursuit of the 2030 SDG goals. And the 8B1, it's talking about existence of a developed and operationalized national strategy for youth employment as a distinct strategy or as part of the national employment strategy. And I think that, and it has some detailed account, what do we mean by operationalized, mainly resource. And that goes a long way into the need for action, and that gives me a good lead to present to you very briefly again the global initiative on decent jobs for youth. Again, we have had, with some of you who have been attending our governing body discussions or various side events in New York or in Geneva, I hope by now quite good familiarity with the global initiative, so I won't go into much detail. And actually, the engagement platform that will go live in a while during the high-level panel, in fact, you will find all this detailed information and explanation on there. But let me just go back to the origin of it. We were actually, while the 2030 SDG agenda was being adopted, prepared, moving from MDGs to the SDGs, we had taken on board the Secretary General of the UN and our Director General that while youth employment seems to have become a global priority and there are many actions that are taking place, nevertheless, these actions remain fragmented. They do not connect, they do not add up. And therefore, the challenge that we just presented in a few trends is this way, and the response, even if every country, I think, by now has a youth employment priority or strategy, nevertheless, we need to scale up action and we need to scale up impact. So this was the rationale for thinking of a inclusive multi-stakeholder partnership. It started from the UN system and as a coalition, a UN-wide system coalition for scaling up action and impact. I don't want to bother you with the UN processes, but ILO was tasked by the UN HLPC, which is the high-level programming segment of the chief executive boards, to come up with, to lead a task team of other partner UN organizations and to come up with a strategy, basically, how can we scale up impact and action. We started with 9 UN agencies and ILO, 11, 15. By the time we adopted, we have 22 United Nations agencies who have subscribed to work jointly under this global initiative for action. But UN has a convening power, has a lot of technical expertise, knowledge expertise, policy advisory role, but youth employment takes a lot more than that. And therefore, this has been converted initially from its inception as a global initiative on decent jobs for youth, which is, after being endorsed by the UN Chief Executive Board and launched at the New York Youth Economic Youth Forum in 2016 has been opening up to governments. If we can go to the list of partners, governments, social partners, foundations, media, academia, youth and civil society, regional institutions, parliamentarians, private sector. So you see that this is the broad partnership and that come together. They are all active in one way or another on youth employment, but the idea is to connect, synergize, and galvanize action with all these partners to get to the impact and scale that we want. We can come back, Susanna, please. There are 4 components to this global initiative. One is building strategic alliance amongst these partners with some governance mechanisms that will come into play. And for advocacy, mobilization of efforts, but connection, policy coherence, policy convergence around youth employment. The main component and the objective is scaling up action and impact, and I will say a few words on the priority thematic action plans. An important component of this global initiative is a knowledge hub to leverage all the existing knowledge of what works on youth employment in an easily accessible manner, but also to use this knowledge hub for capacity building and also to make it a space for not just scaling up impact and action, but innovation, innovative thinking, because as we know, labor market conditions change continuously, and therefore responses have to change continuously. Mobilizing resources, domestic resources, private sector resources, financial, international, global facilities, and all these have been detailed out in the strategy for the global initiative, and you will find more details in the web platform. If I can go now to the action part and the thematic focus. For the first period, the task team and the partners, we have chosen 8 priority themes for action, for partnership. And I'm going very quickly through this. In the pack that has been available to you, you find a little note on each of these action plans, which really canvas the main issues, the main elements of action, and the main partners. However, this is only the tip of the iceberg again. There is a whole story and strategy behind that. So we have quality apprenticeship, digital skills for youth. I don't think any of these will need any explanation why they are so important. Youth in the rural economy, youth transitioning to the formal economy. We just saw the still very high rates of informality among young people. Green jobs for youth, youth entrepreneurship and self-employment, youth in fragile situation, a very important focus of this global initiative, youth who are caught in the situation of conflict, peace building, but also natural disasters or man-made disasters as well. Young workers in hazardous occupations, this is really focusing on the age 15 to 17, which all our surveys show that they are amongst the most vulnerable groups because they may be in the legal age of working, but they are still working in very hard conditions and in sometimes hazardous occupations. And what else I would like to say? Yes, we are also going to launch today where is my copy? A new toolkit for quality apprenticeship. I got it, thank you. Quality apprenticeship, and this is very much demanded, and it has taken a lot of time, expert advice, consultations, analysis of good practices, and this is ILO quality framework for apprenticeship that we are going to launch also today in about an hour. And my colleagues are here who have been working hard on this, Ashwani Agarwal at that time, if you had some questions to ask about it. But this is also as part of the contribution to the knowledge, to the policy coherence and convergence that we want to see, and what we said under the thematic action plan on apprenticeships. I would like also to say something about the guiding principles of the global initiative. We have defined in the strategy some 15 extremely important guiding principles. These are not only slogans or values that have been. These are based on a very thorough analysis by the task team of the experience with youth employment and why some have failed and why some have succeeded. And it is, again, the quality framework for youth employment that we want to say. The need for an approach which looks at demand side, supply side, the need for strong public policies, but together with private sector investment in quality jobs for young people, the need for investing in education and skills development, the lessons that we have learned through what works in apprenticeship, but a very important element of gender equality in all youth employment action, but also the necessity to look at young people's rights in the programs on youth employment. Cutting on the rights of young people doesn't necessarily help them access jobs. And third element, very important around these youths, it's the engagement of young people themselves in the design, in the monitoring, in the implementation, in finding the solutions. And I think that this is a very important element. I am not going to go through the 15 guiding principles, but those who are going to partner, who have already partnered, and who are going to partner with the global initiative have to subscribe to these guiding principles. That is a very important element of that. I think I would like to stop on this at this stage and open the floor for some interaction, question and comments. And I think that I have a request for the floor by our director of the FAO office in Geneva, Mrs. Caroline Rodriguez. Where are you sitting? Okay, Caroline, just in front of me. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all. On behalf of FAO, I am pleased to be here today to express gratitude to all members of the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth, and in particular the ILO Secretariat for continuously working to bring this initiative to life and to scale up much-needed action on youth employment. Rural youth employment is at the heart of FAO's efforts to reduce poverty worldwide. Young women and men in rural economies are powerful catalysts for inclusive growth and sustainable development. Approximately 88% of the world's 1.2 billion youth aged 15 to 24 live in developing countries, many of which, despite rapid urbanization, remain largely rural. Such demographic dividend represents a unique opportunity to advance rural economies and shape the rural transformation process. Action is needed from all actors involved in job creation. We realize in FAO that we cannot deal with the magnitude of this issue alone. Action through the global initiative will allow us to support progress through our respective areas of specialization, all while speaking with one collective and coherent voice. Earlier this year, FAO and ILO co-hosted a side event during the G20 conference in Germany entitled One World, No Hunger, The Future of the Rural World. There was an immense interest from public, private, and nonprofit actors present at the event, all keen to learn more about our cooperation and ways in which they could engage in supporting job creation for our next generations. Through our collective action, next steps in the global initiative will need to focus on areas such as the creation and dissemination of knowledge in order to steer actions and policies in a duly informed way, building synergies among public and private sector actors, and setting up country programs and projects to promote decent youth employment action. FAO will remain at the heart of the discussion, with its active focus on youth employment in rural areas. We look forward to continuing to bring ideas to action and helping create stable and decent jobs for young people. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Caroline Rodriguez. Actually, that shows how important and strong has been the partnership under the Global Initiative, which is going beyond or is distinct from the coordination mechanisms that we have, including on youth employment in the UN. But this is really a coalition for action. And while we all have, and to start with ILO, a very strong youth employment portfolio, this global initiative is really taking it beyond the stage that we all have reached individually as different partners, but put that together, make that more coherent, get up to the scale and impact that we want. This is the only chance for some interactive and question and comments, so I invite you to, if you have questions and comments, to make them now, because in the later segment that we will be hearing from some other activities that we have been doing jointly with our partner organizations, we may not have that much time. It's a very busy week in Geneva for various international meetings. Yes, please. Mr. Luis Morales, Mexico.
Thank you very much, Sita, and thank you for this very interesting presentation and for convening this meeting. Certainly for Mexico, it's a very, very important topic. We are not the exception as a country that prioritizes youth employment. You mentioned the Knowledge Hub as an important element of the initiative, and the importance of sharing good practices and show what works, and the views also from all the relevant actors as a multi-stakeholder part of the initiative. So I'm wondering, of course, our country with all the policies that has been implementing, we are very interested on knowing how to fit in this hub, and who are the ones that are going to be fitting in, what's going to be the methodology around the hub, how we see is going to be accessed. So perhaps can you elaborate a bit more on this knowledge hub, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you for your presentations. I'm speaking on behalf of the Fair Internship Initiative. The report focuses on quality apprenticeships but has no mention of internships, and as a large number of youth do internships to bridge between study and work. I was wondering why internships were not included in the report. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm speaking on behalf of the Health Workforce Department at WHO, the World Health Organization. From our perspective, we are very much encouraged and want to support the global initiative on decent jobs for youth. We work closely with ILO and OECD on trying to bring attention to the health sector as a leading sector of jobs and employment, a leading labor sector. In OECD countries, we know that about 11% of all jobs are in the health and social sector. We know that jobs in the health and social sector are inclusive of women. Almost 70% of jobs, formal employment, is in the health and social sector. And unlike other areas, jobs in this sector are growing. So we know that in the next 15 years, we will probably have 40 million additional jobs created in the sector. So from our side, we are very encouraged and want to support and engage with the platform. We recently had our 4th Global Forum on Human Resources for Health, where there was a youth forum that was associated with it. My colleague can speak more later. But from the youth themselves, there was a very strong call to link with the Decent Jobs initiative. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm representing YFJ, European Youth Forum. First of all, I would like to also support the question about internships, because ILO is leading example that it is possible to have a paid internships within also the UN, and we also would like to highlight the focus on the quality internships. The second point is that we quite often hear the buzzword future of work, and I would like to know if you are planning some research about how the future of work is is influencing young people, because we know, as was already mentioned, that the informal types of work put young people in the really vulnerable situations. So we would like to know more if you would like to focus on this type of work as well. Thank you.
Can I see your book? So let me quickly address some of these questions. Knowledge hub. The situation is as follows. There are several that we have, for instance, one of the key stakeholders of what we call a global repository of youth employment actions. However, not many know about this, and not many can access it when they need it. Similarly, there are other knowledge databases around youth employment, but that remain accessible or even known to those who have access to this. Another point that we don't have systematic impact evaluation of different types of interventions or up-to-date interventions. So at the same time that we want to connect the existing hubs to make that information accessible and inclusive, we are also going through this knowledge hub to generate additional knowledge and also hold a series of webinars on those thematic priorities, on the new evidence that is coming up, and also see where our knowledge is missing. And this also connects with the research areas that the last questions. We are very much focusing on the changes that we are seeing happening on the labor markets, including for youth employment. So let me just say that we are still in the preparatory phase of the global initiative, and I know that there is a lot of impatience, but some of the partners who have helped us, the priority is going to go to the knowledge hubs, and I hope that in a matter of few months we will have done, we can show you the knowledge hub, how it is going to function. Okay, I hope that is sufficient. On the issue of internship, this is a very important area. Actually, we have done many publications this year. I was not going to talk about this one, but this is what we launched in August on the Youth Day. And it's looking at some of the new evidence on youth employment policies and action, what works, in what context. And it has a full chapter on internships. So before getting to the stage that we can launch a quality charter for internships, that is very much on our plans, this is based on many years of research, policy advice, work, comparison of good practices to come up with this. So this is in the making, if I can say. And we hope that we will have a charter. It's a complicated picture on internship. It was also on apprenticeship, but on internships in particular. So we are going to have an internationally framework for quality internships, I hope, in a matter of a couple of years. The last question was about of course, that was a comment, the health sector. We are also touching on that in our latest Get Employment report, and we were very much in collaboration with WHO around that coalition and as part of the global initiative as well. I think that I have answered some of the... Is there one more burning question or comment? If not, then I would request to remain in place. We will make just a few minutes pause to welcome other high-level guests, and we will go into our next session. I want to thank my colleagues here. If you have further questions individually to Steve Kapsos, to Susanna Puerto on the Global Initiative, to Ashwani Agarwal on the Apprenticeship Toolkit, to Neil on internship, on the global employment youth trends, please do have them at the luncheon time. Thank you. Honorable ambassadors, senior representatives from permanent missions, representative of the international organizations, social partners, businesses, youth organizations, ILO colleagues, and colleagues from all the other sister agencies who are here in numbers. We are starting the second part of our discussion this morning around the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth. And this one will be a high-level panel attended by several of our distinguished panelists. Of course, I will mention their names, and they will have a time to give their comments. Mr. Guy Ryder, Director General of the ILO. His Excellency Mr. Cristobal González Aler Jurado, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Spain. Mr. François Rancy. Our high-level panel goes this way, please. So it's a circular panel on this table and in the front row. So Mr. François Rancy, Director of the Radio Communication Bureau International Telecommunication Union. Ms. Isabelle Durand, Deputy Secretary General UNCTAD. Thank you very much for being with us. Ms. Dorothy Ngambi Tembo, Deputy Executive Director of the International Trade Center, ITC. Mr. Francis Kim, Senior Officer, Research and Information, ITUC, International Trade Union Congress, where on my left, Asia Pacific, and Mrs. Tana Lechimi Use, Youth Specialist, IOE, International Organization of Employers, Mr. Christian Frutiger, Head of the Global Public Affairs of Nestlé. So without further ado, I would like to start with our ILO Director General. You have the floor.
Thank you, Azita. Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be before you all in this very full room. Thank you all for coming, and also to be in the company of this very distinguished panel. Welcome to all of our panelists in particular. Well, the occasion that brings us together today is a new phase of our global multi-stakeholder collaboration in the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth. It's an initiative which aims to break down silos which sometimes exist in our activities, to overcome fragmentation, and to secure effective and innovative action in respect of youth employment. As you probably all know, the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth was born last year out of our promise to young women and men and to society at large to tackle a youth employment crisis that impacts not just on our tomorrows but our todays as well. And Azita, I think you've already made reference to the Global Employment Trends report that we have recently published. Once again, this report puts before us a very stubborn and painful reality that nearly 71 million youth are unemployed and another 160 million youth are working but still living in poverty. Informality, irregular employment and arduous school-to-work transitions persist, and our report this year also focused on the future of work for youth and the need, as I've indicated already, for innovative thinking and action to combat additional polarisation in our labour markets. Now, the Global Initiative is set to address these challenges by scaling up action and impact on youth employment through innovative and evidence-based interventions, and it constitutes the overarching partnership for youth employment within the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And it's based on an alliance of committed partners, many of them here, taking action on a variety of priorities, sharing knowledge and leveraging resources for more and better jobs for youth. Now, this multi-stakeholder partnership is in effect an open invitation to governments, to social partners, to youth and to civil society, to the private sector, to foundations, to the United Nations system, to regional institutions, to parliamentarians, to academia and to the media, and to stimulate more participation and to foster greater synergies at regional and country level. Today I'm very pleased to introduce to you the engagement platform of Decent Jobs for Youth. Now, the platform is centred on the commitments of partners to promote decent job for youth, and these commitments are ongoing and upcoming joint actions delivered in alignment with the Global Initiative's objectives and guiding principles at local, country, regional or global level. Furthermore, the platform is well positioned to facilitate a direct contribution in support of the 2030 Agenda. Your innovative solutions will be acknowledged during the UN's annual reviews of progress towards meeting the SDGs and will help enable their replication and their scalability. And here I want to pause to thank in particular the Government of Spain, Ambassador, and indeed of Luxembourg, also represented here, for their material support to the Global Initiative, as well as many other partners who could not be with us this morning. Now, colleagues, this is about partnerships, and we have the social partners here today as well. And indeed, they're on our panel, the trade unions and the employers. We also have Nestlé with us in person, and I would also like to commend the continued commitment of Lukoil, who I also see represented in the room, to youth employment and to the Global Initiative. Your support is most valuable and most appreciated. I also want to express appreciation to the partners who've agreed to be the first to use this digital platform after the in-depth consultations carried out since the launch of this Global Initiative in 2016 at the ECOSOC Youth Forum. And I want, again, to invite new partners to join us, an open invitation, because together we can bring about the scale, the impact and the innovation needed to drive positive change in the lives of young people everywhere. Colleagues, I'm also pleased today to launch the ILO's Toolkit for Quality Apprenticeships. Here it is, which corresponds to one of the key thematic areas of the Global Initiative. It's a commitment that I announced at the Washington meeting of the Global Apprenticeship Networks in October of last year. The toolkit embodies the ILO's own advisory experience and analysis of good practices around the world, and has benefited from several intense rounds of expert discussions. And we think it's a unique resource to exploit and to support the development of quality apprenticeship systems. And we would like to insist upon the quality aspect of apprenticeships. The toolkit elaborates on the 6 building blocks of quality apprenticeships, and we know that quality apprenticeships trigger successful transitions from school to work. They spur cooperation between education and skills development systems, employers and workers, and public employment services. And social dialogue, which is very much the leitmotif of this House, is the key factor of success, boosted by a stable regulatory framework and optimal and equitable funding arrangements. And this first volume is dedicated to assisting policymakers as they design and implement apprenticeships and work-based learning initiatives. It's to be followed next year by a further volume for practitioners supporting global action and advocacy, including our very important collaboration with the Global Apprenticeship Network. Colleagues, another thematic area of the Global Initiative which I want to mention, which has gathered great momentum, is digital skills. This past June, we launched together with our colleagues from the International Telecommunications Union the Digital Skills for Decent Jobs for Youth campaign, with the concrete goal of equipping 5 million young women and men with job-related digital skills. The campaign invites job creators in the public and the private sectors to realise the potential of the information and communications technology and other digitally driven sectors, to employ youth with decent jobs, and to foster an enabling environment for sustainable youth-led digital entrepreneurship. An effort that began with the ITU, to whom we express particular appreciation, and the ILO, has today extended to multiple partners in government, education and training institutions, and the private sector. Take-up has been strong, and our joint invitation to collaborate through this campaign is, as I've already indicated, open. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, in New York last September, during the General Assembly meetings, we focused on youth employment for peace, and we are working with several partners in the UN system to implement the guidelines of our newly adopted International Labour Standard, which is a new recommendation on employment and decent work for peace and resilience, and this through our flagship programme on jobs for peace and resilience. However, colleagues, we all know that we need to do more, and together to harbour the strategic advocacy, knowledge and resources needed to reach scale, impact and innovation. I think that our action has to be commensurate with the size of the challenges before us. That's the objective of the Global Initiative. So I conclude by inviting you all to join with committed partners and world youth employment leaders and experts through the new engagement platform of the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth, and to work together to make a difference in the lives of young people everywhere. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Director General. May I now turn to His Excellency Ambassador González Ariel Jurado. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias,
And
señora.
there is interpretation in English if you need to.
Cosa que agradecemos mucho. Muchísimas gracias, señora presidenta.
Micrófono, perdone.
Muchísimas gracias, señor director general, también. Primero, por brindarnos esta oportunidad a España el estar aquí hoy y compartir esta iniciativa tan importante para la Organización Internacional del Trabajo, pero también y muy especialmente también para España. Mi presencia hoy aquí viene a reflejar el serio y firme compromiso español con esta iniciativa y además, en la medida de lo posible, y si pueden tener interés también, para compartir un poco con todos los aquí presentes cuál ha sido la experiencia española, triste, seria y preocupante, y por eso sigue constituyendo una prioridad absoluta de los diferentes gobiernos anteriores y actuales, y por ello sigue constituyendo una prioridad en la actuación legislativa del Gobierno español. Pero además de eso, y como bien ha explicado el director general, el paro juvenil trasciende más allá de todas las fronteras. es un fenómeno, por supuesto, nacional de cada uno de nuestros países, pero al mismo tiempo, en nuestro caso, y como miembro de la Unión Europea, es un problema europeo y es un problema mundial. Y por eso creemos que esta iniciativa de sumar esfuerzos entre todos y a escala internacional es fundamental. Hoy en día, y como es sabido, hay más de 700 millones de jóvenes que buscan trabajo en el mundo y que se suman a los 160 millones de jóvenes que trabajan pero viven en la pobreza. Y por eso, como decía, hacen que esta iniciativa global sea una prioridad necesaria y urgente. En el caso español, y nuestra experiencia a lo largo de los últimos decenios, es que el paro juvenil siempre ha sido un problema estructural, con independencia del crecimiento económico y, por supuesto, con una incidencia mayor durante las épocas de crisis económicas. Pero incluso en la época de mayor crecimiento, las tasas de paro entre los jóvenes españoles nunca ha descendido por debajo del 18%, que es un porcentaje importante. Y siempre ha duplicado el de la población en general. Durante la crisis económica y financiera han quedado precisamente al descubierto las peores debilidades de nuestro sistema, fundamentalmente condicionado por un rígido marco laboral. El despido como mecanismo de ajuste, fundamentalmente de costes laborales, ante la disminución de la demanda, fue un procedimiento utilizado casi en un 70% de los casos, y ese es uno de los principales motivos por el que se produjeran más de 4 millones de despidos y una tasa de desempleo juvenil que llegó a multiplicarse por 3. Por ello, en España, en los años de la crisis, el desempleo juvenil supuso casi el 60% frente al 27% europeo o al 13% mundial. ¿Qué hemos estado haciendo para afrontar ese problema? Me voy a referir a las últimas iniciativas adoptadas, como fue el caso de la reforma laboral que aprobó el Parlamento español en el año 2012 y que vino a introducir fundamentalmente flexibilidad, formación, emprendimiento y una suma de iniciativas público y privadas. Los resultados ciertamente han sido positivos, pero queda, déjame decirlo desde entrada, queda todavía muchísimo trabajo por realizar. Pero entre esos resultados positivos, por ejemplo, la OCDE ha reconocido el aumento del porcentaje de contratos indefinidos en un 46% que ha contribuido a la inserción de los jóvenes en el mercado del trabajo. La contratación indefinida de jóvenes menores de 25 años está creciendo por encima del 20%, concretamente llegó a ser del 25% en el año 2016 y en lo que llevamos de año del 2017, ahora mismo estamos superando el 21%. Más de medio millón, casi 600.000 jóvenes han firmado un contrato de formación y aprendizaje y cerca de 450.000 jóvenes han comenzado un proyecto por cuenta propia. La estrategia española de empleo juvenil ha ofrecido oportunidades de empleo, formación o emprendimiento a más de 1,5 millones de jóvenes. Ya son más de 800.000 los inscritos en el programa de garantía juvenil, por el que se ofrecen a los jóvenes, en particular a los que ni estudian ni trabajan, los que hoy en día en España conocemos como NIS, o bien una formación ocupacional o bien directamente un empleo. Todas estas medidas, evidentemente, nos han llevado a reducir el paro y a crear empleo, duplicando la tasa de creación de empleo juvenil en España con respecto a la europea y reduciendo la tasa de desempleo joven en casi 20 puntos. Además, con la calidad de los llamados, por ejemplo, millennials, ya son líderes en la creación de pequeñas y medianas empresas en España. Los jóvenes españoles lideran hoy en día el ranking en innovación en Europa y estamos orgullosos de ellos. Pero, como decía al principio, todavía, evidentemente, queda mucho trabajo por hacer. Hoy en día nuestra tasa de desempleo juvenil roza el 39%, que es una cifra preocupante, seria y frente a la que, como decía al principio, hay que aunar esfuerzos. Para nosotros es prioritario seguir favoreciendo la empleabilidad y el acceso de los jóvenes al mercado de trabajo y por eso hemos puesto en marcha también una agenda integral por la calidad en el empleo. Para todo ello, también en el ámbito nacional trabajamos desde la búsqueda de consensos, acuerdos sociales y políticos, negociando en el marco del diálogo social español un nuevo paquete de medidas que incluyan ayuda económica. Ahora mismo es de 400 euros al mes, pero una ayuda económica para aquellos jóvenes menores de 30 años con mayores dificultades de inserción laboral. Un nuevo programa de formación basado en el contrato de relevo, un nuevo marco normativo de calidad para el primer empleo y una actualización de nuestra estrategia española de emprendimiento y empleo joven hasta el año 2020. Somos plenamente conscientes, y como señalaba antes el director general, que esta plataforma y esta iniciativa es un desarrollo fundamental y prioritario del objetivo número 8 de la Agenda 2030. Desde el inicio de esta iniciativa, y como ya le manifestó nuestra ministra al propio director general en septiembre en Nueva York, que incluso también hemos hablado de ella en la última cumbre iberoamericana celebrada en Cartagena de Indias, en donde hubo una reunión específica de los ministros de empleo de la zona iberoamericana. Para nosotros, como decía al principio, esta es una iniciativa fundamental. Se trata de sumar esfuerzos, experiencias, buenas prácticas. Nuestra ministra incluso llegó a firmar un acuerdo, un MOU de trabajo y de entendimiento y de cooperación con la OIT. Hemos también hecho un importante esfuerzo financiero por el cual contribuimos con 2 millones de euros para poder también colaborar y trabajar conjuntamente en esta iniciativa. Y por ello, señor director general, puede usted contar con el serio compromiso y la firme voluntad por parte del Gobierno español en sumar y aunar esfuerzos y consensuar medidas para realmente poder hacer frente entre todos a esta lacra del siglo XXI que todavía sigue azotando a muchas de nuestras economías y a muchísimos de nuestros jóvenes. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Muchas gracias for your candid elaboration of the situation in Spain, what government can do and are doing around the world. So that was very telling and for espousing, actually, the cause of the global initiative from its inception, as you mentioned. I mentioned earlier this morning that 22 United Nations entities have coalesced under the global initiative to put all their might, convening power, expertise, and resource mobilization strategies behind the global initiative. And we are very privileged to have 3 representatives of 3 of these international organizations. And I would like to request Mr. François Drancy first, Director of the Radio Communication Bureau of ITU, to give his brief comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellencies and dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's a particular pleasure for me to represent ITU at this distinguished launch of the engagement platform of Decent Jobs for Youth, the global initiative for action. ITU is very pleased to celebrate this step forward in our joint global commitment towards addressing the global youth employment crisis through multi-stakeholder collaboration. ITU, as the UN agencies for ICT, is proud to be one of the founding partners of Decent Jobs for Youth initiative, and very pleased to be leading, together with ILO, the Digital Skills for Decent Jobs for Youth campaign. The goal of this campaign is threefold. Firstly, to promote an enabling environment for young people to seize the employment and entrepreneurship opportunities offered by the growing digital economy, and beyond it, by the digital transformation of our societies. Secondly, to encourage the creation of new job opportunities in order to integrate more young women and men in the labor market and help digital economies to flourish. Thirdly, and more concretely, to equip 5 million young women and men with job-related digital skills. In line with the principle of engaging multiple groups, this campaign is designed to incentivize a range of stakeholders to prepare young people with job-ready digital skills in the growing digital economy. Indeed, this campaign has already succeeded in attracting several stakeholders to commit to train young people, and I understand that one of them is also present today. I would like to thank you for your commitment. We look forward to seeing more and more commitments to our common work showcased on the engagement platform, which will also enable all of us to track progress towards our goal of training 5 million young people with job-ready digital skills. Please allow me to use this opportunity to encourage governments, the private sector, academia, civil society, and other UN agency and training providers everywhere to join hands to train young people with basic, mid-level, advanced, and digital entrepreneurship skills, along with soft skills, as part of the Digital Skills for Decent Job for Youth campaign. We look forward to our continuing fruitful collaboration with ILO and all partners of Decent Jobs for Youth. Thank you very much for joining this celebration.
Thank you, Mr. Rancy. Indeed, one of the first initiators and a very active partner. Mrs. Isabelle Durand, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD. May I invite you to give your comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, of course, UNCTAD is really pleased to be part of this important global initiative on youth empowerment. I would like to make some comments, so you asked to me. First of all, at all levels, we defend all the same position. It's important to create jobs. Okay, but what means today create jobs? What means and what will mean for the young people the labor market, not only today but in the next decades, because of course the labor market will change in the developed countries but also in the developing countries. And of course, we all agree on the fact that SMEs are the best place to create jobs. That's true. But those SMEs maybe would create more jobs for young people if they are created through young people. Sometimes SMEs created through young people will not hire a senior. They will, first of all, hire people, young people. So I think that we have to support especially creating of startups with young people. That's a first thing. Of course, create, but also maintain the activity. It's not only create a startup, but following those young people in order to give them the support to go further and the evolution of their startup, because of course it could be also a little bit immediate creation and without consequences. That's a first remark. Second remark, I think that the young people, maybe better than us, are sometimes more ready than us to jump in the terra incognita, because they are knowing that their future will be different as our past or as our present. But of course they have to be helped to do that. A third remark, the women, and especially the young women, I'm happy to have one of them in the panel. I think that we have also to have pay attention to young women, especially because when we help women to create or to develop jobs, we help all the society and not only women. And that's really important to have a focus on them. And for next things, it's education and skills. Of course, we have probably to develop also soft skills. Not only skills, traditional skills, but soft skills, because they are sometimes insufficiently touched in the education, and there is a strong difference in quality of education also between the rural areas and urban areas, especially in LDC countries. What about UNCTAD? Of course, I speak also in the perspective of NDC countries, and allow me to conclude with a very recent experience for a part of a small partnership. UNCTAD just finished a pilot course on the new economy in which 24 entrepreneurs from Africa participated. This was done together with the Alibaba Group, where new approaches were shown on the digital ecosystem and entrepreneurship. And it is a typical example of how to scale up efforts and share and apply knowledge between young people from Africa and a high level of digital enterprise in China. So I think I hope that we could share our experience and share also new initiative, and I'm very happy to it's a pleasure for me to participate to that. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame Leroy. I will now invite Mrs. Dorothy Ngambi Tembo, Deputy Executive Director of ITC, International Trade Center. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Excellencies and all. Firstly, I would like to thank you, Director General Ryder, with your team for taking leadership in creating this platform, and ITC is particularly pleased to be associated with the platform. I wanted to start by perhaps putting into context what it is that we're really trying to achieve. And in so doing, I'll give an example of what transpired last week. Last week, we have launched in Senegal an e-commerce platform which mainly targets young entrepreneurs, MSMEs, in promoting their connection to global value chains through online trading. We heard from Aminata, a 30-year-old CEO of a company called Nema that exports mango to Europe, highlighting how through the support that ITC had provided to her, had scaled up her company's international competitiveness, brought additional income to her employees, and helped generate decent job, and most importantly, also contribute to overcoming the migration issues. We heard earlier on in the presentation that you, Chair, led with others regarding the trends. It is very clear that the gap between the youth that are ready to get into the market and those that actually get in is a challenge, particularly in the African context, where you have 11 million having the potential to get into the market and only 3 million getting there at the end of the day. And Aminata is an example of that. But she is also an example of what is potentially possible when youth are afforded the opportunity to be able to be active participants in the global economy. The African Competitiveness Report reveals that Africa needs to create 450 million new jobs in 2035, whereas current policies will only generate 100 million jobs. The evidence is very much there. It is therefore crucial that we put our efforts together to promote decent jobs for youth and implement actions at all levels, from the local to the national and the global levels. With the growing number of youth entering the labor markets and limited job opportunities for them, employment and disengagement are threatening sustainable development and social stability, and could also create an environment that causes people to migrate in search of jobs. Therefore, the importance of this multi-stakeholder partnership to scale up action and achieve greater impact on youth employment across the world cannot but be emphasized and applauded. We, are, as part of this initiative, very keen to contribute to the actions boosting entrepreneurship and self-employment, working with others, and definitely wanting to go beyond perhaps what our initial commitment is at present. As an agency dedicated to supporting internationalization of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, we certainly will be focusing on trade. In particular, we feel that this is an area that can generate higher quality and better paying jobs. We focus on SMEs, as you heard before, because they employ the vast majority of the people. We also focus on marginalized groups in society, such as young women and men, because when they get better livelihood opportunities, the socio-economic dividends for their families and communities are disproportionately large and inclusive. For ITC specifically, our commitment, and I repeat, this is a starting point, understanding that we do have many projects that are coming on stream next year, where we have seen clearly that there is a particular focus on the generation of youth employment. And therefore, we are very much convinced that we would have a larger scope of work in which to contribute into the platform. But for a start, we are focusing on the youth economic empowerment through our youth and trade program, supporting young entrepreneurs to connect and compete in regional and international markets, increasingly by tapping into the digital economy and building skill sets of the future labor force. We have a project that is ongoing in the Gambia, whose activities address the economic root causes of irregular migration among youth, exemplifying the implementation of the guiding principles of this initiative. It seeks to positively impact both quantity and quality of the jobs for youth. It prioritizes gender equality and fosters interventions that combine supply and demand side measures many young people need to be competitive. We will continue to share with you the results, but we will also continue to share with you the experiences that we are drawing from the implementation of this project. I believe even the challenges should be ones that we share amongst ourselves, because this will make us understand what works and what doesn't work, and how we avoid certain aspects of the of what is demanded of the implementation process. In conclusion, the platform for us is a must. It is timely, and ITC remains committed to supporting, together with others, its successful implementation. We have conviction. Together, we can scale up actions and impact on youth employment towards the achievement of more sustainable and youth-inclusive future. We also believe, together, we can make decent jobs a reality for our young men and women. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Gamitembo, and for bringing up all those very important issues. I'm refraining from commenting on any of these aspects because our panelists have some commitments, but that shows the value of cooperation and the platform to engage in all these types of discussion, including the challenges, as you mentioned. I would like now turn to this part of the panel, this table, and I would like to start first with Mr. Francis Kim, who has been with us for the last 3 days on the jobs conference we had. He would represent on this panel the workers' role and how social partners can support partnership for youth employment.
Thank you, Ajita. Good morning. First of all, I would like to congratulate the ILO on launch of this engagement platform for the global initiative on decent jobs for youth. Also, I welcome ILO's hard work featured today on quality of apprenticeships and youth employment, which I believe it will be invaluable input to scale up our action and impacts on youth employment. What I want to say today has been already emphasized by our distinguished speaker before me. We need to act together without delay to tackle the crisis faced by young people. We all know it is just an empty political rhetoric to realize sustainable and inclusive development as committed in the 2030 Agenda unless we can address serious deficit in quality and quantity of jobs, social protection, and equal opportunity for young people. I'm very pleased to see that the ILO has been taking the leading role in advancing this initiative. I may say it's rather imperative for ILO to do so, since ILO is based on tripartism. Social dialogue is a fundamental base to ensure a democratic, inclusive, and coherent approach to solve the young youth issue with enormous social, political, economic, and environmental implications, including peace, definitely. And ITUC always put forth an effort to achieve our agenda for young people, which is well in line with the 8 priorities for action of this initiative. Recently, ITUC Youth Committee adopted the economic and political agenda for young workers. Young workers want what workers have always wanted: labor protections, equal opportunities, safe and secure jobs, and workplaces free from discrimination and violence, wages on which youth can live and plan for future, gender-sensitive life cycle social protection systems, and lastly but not least, the young voices heard through the collective bargaining and social dialogue. The ITUC Asia Pacific also, in this regard, has the Youth Charter to address the current and forthcoming challenges on mainstreaming youth in the region. We will continue our struggles to realize the trade union agenda for youth by organizing more young people, empowering more youth in trade union decision-making bodies, and so on. Also, we are quite committed to continue our engagement with our social partners and others and stakeholders in more constructive social dialogue to solve these challenges together for sustainable and inclusive future we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'm turning to the other side of the panel, to Tana Lechemi Use Lech, who is the youth specialist of IOE and a partner around many issues. Lech, you have the floor.
Thank you, Azita, and good afternoon, colleagues. I am pleased to represent the IOE at today's launch of the engagement platform of the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth. Young people constitute a generation of consumers, workers, innovators, and investors. Businesses with a long-term view are keen to ensure a continued stream of consumers and young workers with relevant skills. There is a strong case for businesses to get actively involved in the work on youth employment, especially in the context of the SDGs, which recognize the role the private sector plays as an important development partner. The IOE recently embarked on a study to create a youth progress index together with Deloitte that looks at the different institutional and policy frameworks that contribute to youth's progress across the globe. The results of this upcoming study indicates that access to digital tools, education, fostering entrepreneurship, and harnessing the potential of young female talent are key to contributing to youth's overall progress. However, these factors cannot be created by the private sector alone. Take the example of education. While the social partners can help to identify the skills needs in the labor market, it is the education authorities that can convert this knowledge into practice by adapting current education curricula to reflect labor market needs. Now, this illustration shows us that involving key stakeholders, notably the tripartite constituents, in solutions to combat youth unemployment is important. This principle is epitomized today as we see for ourselves key stakeholders around the table gathered here for the launch of the engagement platform. Now, Decent Jobs for Youth is based on an alliance of committed partners that have taken action across a wide variety of thematic priorities, all in a bid to allow a sharing of good practices, a sharing of knowledge, and leveraging their resources, all in a bid to create more and better jobs for youth. Now, as a representative of the private sector that is committed to tackle youth unemployment, and as a youth myself, I look forward to seeing this platform in action in the coming months. The challenge for policymakers today is to focus on the long run in coming up with new solutions, in coming up with the necessary partnerships to make a concerted effort to tackle this issue of great importance. Of course, no country can do it all at once and all alone. Through tripartite consultations, priorities can be selected and partnerships forged that can have the best impact in the short run and contribute to long-term employment for youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Usse. Thank you. And I would like to request Christian Frutiger, Head of the Global Public Affairs, to talk about Nestlé as a partner and contributor to the global initiative.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I represent Nestlé, the world's biggest food and beverage company. We have over 300,000 direct employees and, of course, have a multi-million employment impact both downstream and upstream in our value chain. I would like to start off where my colleague from the IOE finished, and that's on the opportunities with young people. We have, I think for the first time in history, the largest generation of young people in the world, over 40%. So that represents a tremendous opportunity for our future. The problem is that they are, as we've seen in the ILO report, disproportionately affected by precarity, by unemployment, and underemployment. In rural areas, for example, that lack of opportunities pushes young people to leave their communities and to migrate to larger cities in the search of work. So the world is running out of farmers. When we think of the future demographic projections in the world, 9 billion, 10 million people, the question is who will be able to feed all of us? In the global south, the average farmer is around 50. In the global north, they're between 60 and 70, so technically should be retired. So a big question mark, which is a problem for us as a food and beverage company, because all our raw materials come from agriculture, but it's a problem for everyone. The world is also running out of qualified workers. Traditional education no longer necessarily prepares young people for work, because many of the jobs, of the future don't exist yet. Also, what we see in some countries is that up to 60% of those who leave school are actually unable to read or write. Again, a problem for us as a company, but a broader problem. So the private sector can play a role, but governments have to create the right conditions. So what do we want to do as a company? So we want to help develop the right skills for young people so they can either find jobs or create their own. So in September this year at the UN General Assembly, our CEO announced the expansion of our Nestlé Needs Youth initiative to include the entire value chain, from the sourcing of raw materials to the manufacturing and distribution of our products. This initiative builds on what we've done in Europe, in Spain, and in other countries in developing employability skills and promoting the dual education system. I particularly welcome the toolkit on quality apprenticeships the ILO has launched today. And as a Swiss citizen, I'm particularly proud of the dual education system gaining traction. At Nestlé over the last decade, we have helped hundreds of thousands of young people prepare for work. We have trained and supported 4 million farmers, and we have helped 2 million women develop business skills. So our ambition now for 2030 is to help create 10 million economic opportunities for young people. Help young people get ready for work through education and on-the-job training. Make agriculture attractive, some say sexy again, through technology and innovative farming practices. Develop skills of young entrepreneurs that they can build their own business, and be part of our future economic success. And of course, we want to develop the future leaders of our company. We have to do this together. Experience shows that this kind of thing cannot be achieved alone. In Europe and the Americas, we have created the Alliance for Youth to work in partnership with other companies and organizations. We are delighted today to be one of the first companies to join the engagement platform, which is really a unique opportunity for a variety of partners work together and offer young people the opportunities and the platform where they can develop their creativity. I think there is a desperate need for creativity in the labor market. So we call on others to join us, other stakeholders, other companies, other governments, to support young people for a better future, for their better future, but also for our own better future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Actually, in our high-level panel, we are really working and talking for representation. So Nestle has been, of course, partner joined with Lukoil and many other companies who have expressed their intention to contribute to the global initiative. So thank you very much. And I would like now, at this stage, to open the floor to a couple of additional remarks for those who have requested it. I would like also to mention, I should have said it in the beginning, that the Secretary General's youth envoy, Ms. Jayatma, I have all the time to look at Vikra Mayake, was very much keen to be here. She sees the promotion of the global initiative on decent jobs for youth as part of her terms of reference and advocacy campaign, in also reaching out and engaging youth organizations. So she couldn't be for us for last-minute unexpected reasons, but I wanted to acknowledge her support. I would like now to request Mr. Philip Wheeler, attaché from the permanent mission of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg.
Director General, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues and colleagues from the private sector. I wish to join the previous speakers in congratulating ILO for successfully launching the engagement platform here today. Luxembourg's Development Corporation places its efforts especially at the service of poverty eradication in least developed countries. Allowing young people to have access to productive and decent jobs is a key priority of our official development aid, which we pursue jointly with partner countries and multilateral organizations. We believe that ILO's global initiative is a strong vehicle for creating more and better jobs in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, the multi-partner alliance and the policy coherence which are fostered by the global initiative resonate strongly with our own approach to official development aid. In short, Luxembourg would like to commend the ILO and the Employment Policy Department in particular for leading efforts in this important area of decent job creation, and indeed to confirm support to the global initiative. Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the support. And last but not least, the importance of youth engagement in this global initiative. So I would like to ask Mr. Ashish Kular, board member, organizing partner, Children and Youth International, a UN major group for children and youth. It's a long title, to give the final comments on this segment of our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. When I read the run of show, I was the second last speaker, but now I'm the last speaker, so it's a lot more responsibility to deliver. So to avoid protocol and get straight to the topic at hand. So it's pretty evident that youth unemployment is a global crisis, and I think that's been elaborated very well. We don't need to get into the statistics that specify that. But what was very articulately phrased today, that youth are the worst affected demographic within the unemployed sector, and the unemployed sector which is growing fast. And sometimes this is overlooked in the general narrative, but not amongst the community involved within this conversation. So it's great that it's there. And also to add that this is an issue that affects young people in all contexts, as you can see in one of the areas of the strategy as well, fragile context is specifically mentioned. It affects young people in all countries and all stages of the economy. So keeping that in mind, we feel this is a very, very timely and much needed initiative. I mean, the UN has many initiatives all the time, but something unique about this initiative is that it has really embodied a whole of society approach. And this is extremely important for it to be a coherent and coordinated response. So this is very much welcomed. To add to that, it's pretty rare to see in today's political environment so many actors that would traditionally not be aligned are being actually brought together in this comprehensive and system-wide initiative which goes beyond just the UN. So as of now, we have every reason to believe that this is a genuine approach, a non-politicized approach, and a multi-pronged approach to tackle what the economists from yesterday and day before yesterday at the symposium would call a sticky issue, issue which is difficult to get rid of. Now, the scale, intent, and focus, I think this is a point that the others haven't made so far, so we'd like to make this. The scale, intent, and focus make it extremely clear that we are not only addressing the issue of youth unemployment here. We're using youth unemployment essentially as a means of implementation to address a lot of other issues that the 2030 agenda highlights. We talk about green jobs, we talk about youth in fragile contexts, we talk about digital skills. So these are all linked to different areas of the global agenda. And essentially the approach needs to further exemplify, I mean, it does, but in the next phases, it needs to continue to treat this as not only ending youth unemployment, but ending youth unemployment as a means to promote sectors and promote avenues where we need action to achieve the agendas we have all agreed to. And lastly, I mean, the fact that we are here is testament to the fact that the scope of dialogue has been broadened, and youth organizations and youth entities are directly engaged in the conversation, in the framework. I'd just like to reiterate the fact that a lot of youth entities in the formal and informal economy, this is something we specifically like to highlight, are already working on all the 4 areas of work outlined in the initiative. So from our side, it is really going to be trying to link up the work that youth organizations are already doing and add value to this initiative. Now, lastly, I would not be doing justice to the youth card if I was only all appreciation and didn't raise the flag to be cautious about certain aspects. I think there's nothing that prevents us from saying that decent work is a human right, and this is something that should be exemplified with all partners moving forward in implementing the next phases of the initiative. This is something which is extremely important to this moving forward. And lastly, I think this is a comment not specifically to ILO, but to, in fact, more of the partners present in the room. I mean, ILO so far has been doing a great job in terms of the narrative setting around this. So I was counting what most partners spoke about in terms of the action areas of the compact. And the only topics which were touched upon in an elaborative manner were digital skills and youth entrepreneurship. And of course, these are important. These are action areas within the compact. But just to be cautious about the fact that the compact, the initiative has 8 focus areas. And most of the young people most gravely affected by the lack of decent work, by the lack of being in the formal segment, do not have access to voluntary entrepreneurship. Of course, a lot of involuntary entrepreneurship is there. So just a little caution on to not get obsessed with the lower hanging fruit, which seems to be a topic right now. But so far, so good. We are very much committed to this. We look forward to working together, and we'll be watching as we should and raise these points. So thank you so much for having us here. And we hope it was constructive and yet appreciative. So thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ashish. You will be doing more than watching, engaging with the global initiative. I would like to thank everyone who came, who took time from a very busy week in the agenda of the international community in Geneva to be here with us for the launch. Please join us. Please examine the global platform. ILO team and the UN team are at your disposal for additional explanation. Join us and partner. And also for those who can, please join us for a light luncheon, youth-friendly light luncheon that is offered outside at the Espace Gobelin. And very many thanks for our distinguished high-level panelists here. Thank you very much.